Sue Lee is the winner of the 2016 Art Street Prize that promotes the art of writing and mentors today's extraordinary young writers. Sue was born in China and raised in the United States. An only child, she developed a love of libraries and dreamed of becoming an author. A daughter of physicians, she went on to attend Yale University, where she majored in English literature and completed the writing concentration in nonfiction. She studied under Anne Fadiman, whose book The Spirit Catches You and You Fall Down inspired her to write about medicine, and now, as a student at the Icahn School of Medicine at Mount Sinai, Sue spends her time attending to patients, practicing her suturing skills, and doing research in gynecologic oncology. In between the challenges of medicine and writing, she enjoys lifting weights at the gym, attending New York Philharmonic concerts, and watching YouTube videos of chefs cooking food she admits to being incapable of making. She's passionate about women's reproductive health, and in a few months will be applying for residency in obstetrics and gynecology. Sue, good to have you with us today.
Hi, it's so good to be here.
How did you first come involved with writing?
Yeah, I think that I've been sort of writing my whole life, both in like more of a literary sense, but also just literally writing. I moved to the US when I was 4, and I don't really remember like learning English or learning how to spell or how to write or anything. But I do remember ever since I was a kid, I was always just like writing short stories in my notebook, or reading them to my parents and that sort of thing. So really from a very young age.
And what does writing mean to you today, and also growing up?
I think that growing up, I do really love libraries. I read a lot of books as a kid. And, I think that a lot of people say that books are a way to sort of transport you and expose you to new worlds or new cultures and new environments. And that was very much the case for me. Like it was a way to not only understand like the new country and the new language that I was growing up in, but also sort of a way to see what else was out there. And I think, from a young age, the desire was sort of there to, when I would go to a library and see all these books on the shelves, to one day like have my own book there, to one day write my own story, whether it's about me or about, something fictional.
And are there particular authors you've been most influenced by?
Yeah, I really, really admire Anne Fadiman. It was such a pleasure, and I'm so grateful to have been able to study under her guidance when I was at Yale. So she's definitely someone whose writing I very much admire, and she's a terrific person as well. But I think that especially in her book, The Spirit Catches You and You Fall Down, she really, I think she wrote very well about the challenges of medicine in a way that I hope to emulate one day. Like she talks a lot about not only just the clinical challenges, but also the cultural challenges and how to bridge those gaps as a physician and also as a writer.
And tell our listeners a little bit more about Anne Fadiman, who may not otherwise be familiar with her.
Sure. So she is a nonfiction writer, and I took a nonfiction writing class with her at Yale called Writing About Oneself, which was really a class about sort of memoir-based nonfiction writing. And her book, The Spirit Catches You and You Fall Down, is the true story of a Hmong family in Northern California who had recently immigrated, and then one of their children falls ill, and is basically about their encounters with the medical system in the 1980s is when all of this took place, and a lot of the challenges that the physicians who cared for this patient faced when they were sort of being able to address not only the medical issues that were at play, but also the cultural and the social barriers.
And you're drawn to writers with a strong cultural profile, yes?
Yeah, I am. I think in a sense, because medicine, I think, has its own culture. And when that sort of either meshes with or clashes with our own cultures and societies and our own individual backgrounds, I find extremely interesting.
And how does medicine clash with our own culture?
Medicine itself, I think, is it's a very demanding culture, but it also literally has its own language, right? In medical school, you spend time learning the language of medicine. You spend time learning the terminology of all of these diagnoses. We always emphasize how important communication is when we're communicating with our patients and their families. And I think that there are times when, we always try to think of the patient as an individual, whole, unique, beautiful person. But there are times when medicine itself is so challenging and so complex that it's really easy, I think, to sort of let some of the communication fall apart, or you can really see sometimes where that can break down. And I think the constant struggle is to make sure that it doesn't.
And along the lines of communication, obviously, as a writer, that would seem to give you perhaps that much more insight in how to communicate. Would that be fair to say?
That's sort of my hope in writing when I do write about medicine, is to somehow try and bridge that gap. Like I hope that I would be able to write in a way that appeals not to just physicians or just medical students or just to patients, but I would like that my writing would be able to be read and understood and appreciated by both groups. That's sort of the thinking behind when I wrote Histories, is that I wanted to share a little bit of what it's like being a medical student, especially a medical student early on in my career, the sort of doubts and the hopes and the fears that we have at that point, and to be able to share that not only with my colleagues, but with people outside of medicine, so that they might see and better understand what that's like.
And in Histories, which was your prize-winning submission, you talked about discipline as well. Tell us about discipline, both as a writer and a medical student.
The funny thing is, in a lot of writing classes, you always talk about, the discipline and the sort of habits that each writer has, right? I think some people write a certain amount of time or a certain amount of words at a certain time of day and all sorts of things. And so I do think it takes a certain amount of discipline to be a writer and to be producing work, at some sort of reasonable rates. And similarly, in medicine, right, there's obviously a lot of discipline required to learn as much medicine as you can, because medical school itself is so rigorous, because the training it takes to become a physician is so rigorous. And also there are times when you, not necessarily you alone, but you as the medical community, hold in your hands the balance of people's lives. And because that's just so incredible and so incredibly important, it takes a lot of work, right, to be able to handle all of that and to make sure that everything goes okay as well as it can. So definitely discipline just in terms of pure studying, I think. But I think there's also a lot of emotional discipline involved as well. You at times will work long hours and encounter very emotionally challenging patients or emotionally challenging scenarios or cases. And to be able to still, I think, hold yourself together and have that sort of resolve to keep going or to do your best in the face of adversity.
And what's your experience been with the Icahn School of Medicine? They're quite a supportive organization, aren't they?
Yeah, they are. I've been really happy here, and I really can't imagine being anywhere else. It's definitely been extremely challenging, but I do feel like the administration's been really responsive in terms of trying to support students as best as they can through this entire educational process.
And what are your aspirations, Sue, both for writing and medicine separately and together going forward?
Like I was saying earlier, I would hope to be able to write for not only patients, but also for physicians, right? And to sort of bridge the gap that sometimes might arise just because medicine is so complicated, because life itself is so complicated. And I hope in my career, both as a physician, and as a writer, to be able to share patient stories and also to share physician stories and physician experiences. But I also hope to have a career as a physician, right, applying into obstetrics and gynecology, and being able to care for women is something that I feel very, very passionately about. I don't really see my career as sort of one or the other, like I'm a physician or I'm a writer. To me, it feels very natural to be both. It's sort of been the perfect union for me. Like, I don't know how I would get through medical school without writing. And there are also times when I feel like the thing I want most to write about is medicine.
And tell us about collaboration, Sue, with your family, peers, colleagues, doctors. What does it mean for you?
Within medicine, it's such an incredibly collaborative art, right? Because you work with so many different people. You work with nurses, you work with other physicians, consultants, social workers, not just physicians of every discipline, but really just something that's really been impressed upon me during third year is just how many people make up the entire team that cares for a patient. And I also really love working with people and trying to facilitate that and seeing where I fit in, currently as a medical student and hopefully in the future as a physician. So that's something I really enjoy, just working with people towards some sort of common goal. And I think that more broadly in my life in general, in terms of medicine and writing, like I've mentioned earlier, like medical school is a really difficult process. So I've been very fortunate to have friends and family that I can lean on when I need to, and to also be able to provide that sort of support to my friends and to my colleagues as well.
Such a collaborative art, as you mentioned, which describes so much, both within and beyond medicine. Congratulations again, Sue, on your Art Street Prize, and we're looking forward to what lies ahead.
Great, thank you so much.